This build slaps so hard that I've been tempted to call it the raid boss build. Even if you don't care about the build theme or you just want to see what you can do, this is an example of what kind of builds that you could do with Druid late game, and this makes me very excited for the end game of Druid. And that's no exaggeration, as you can see in the footage. It's hilariously effective cheesing everything in beta. Even my companions alone are shredding bosses that used to absolutely dump on me. So as we approach the last 24 hours of beta, I've put a ton of time and effort and love into carefully crafting the most diabolical, sinister, and ravenous werewolf build I could. The overview is that this build revolves completely around heavy crit chance, making your Earthen Bulwark shield, turning it basically into Giga Chad that doesn't give a shit about anything, and buffing your pets to the point where they all combined may actually slightly come close to rivaling a single Necromancer skeleton. Let's go over the skills that I chose and how I allocated them and kind of give a reasoning why. For the basic, we're only going to be putting in 2 points, the bare minimum. No points in the third slot because we're not running poison because the effect is kind of and the other is very Hope that these get buffed later. We're just going to get our bonuses elsewhere. Now for the core abilities, we're going to go all in on Shred. This is really going to be our bread and butter. So maxed out, and then we're going to be going all the way to the dash perk at the end of the tree because the poison is kind of a noob trap and the mobility in 99.9% of encounters feels necessary. The Druid in general really lacks mobility, and I hope the devs add more, so this is really, in my mind, mandatory. Now for defensive, this is where things start to get a little bonkers. We're going to go into Earth Shield and then only to the middle row for the unstoppable effect because it really is that good. There's so much crowd control and garbage that is going to be thrown your way that being able to shake it off is very, very important. People are going to say, but Earthen Shield is bad and it doesn't last long enough. We're going to resolve that later. Now the massive bulk of your points is going to be put into companions. We only want 1 point at the starting nodes just to unlock them so you have the option, and then you're going to go for the Raven third that gives vulnerability because that is crazy effective. That vulnerability is adding so much power to this build and lets you shred the bosses. And then you also have the Vine that gives 20% crit chance, and that is another synergy. Really with this build you're wanting to see all of these components come together. And then lastly for the Wolf slot that gives more attack speed because these are your companions, you want to give them as much of a fighting chance as you can. Now for legendaries, because that is where this truly has the synergy blast through the roof, this is really what makes it possible. You're going to see very quickly as I start listing them off what the heck is going on. The most important one by far, and this build is literally impossible to do without it, is you want to get a two-handed weapon and slam on the legendary effect that turns your wolves into werewolves, and now they can spread their rabies effect. This is core. You don't even bother trying if you don't have this. It also gives them a ton more damage, and this is why you're really going into the two-handed weapon, because it doubles the bonus, and by far this is very, very essential. The next one goes into the amulet that adds 50% more to the effect, and this legendary effect gives you 1 more companion, so now you're going to have 3 werewolves, and it raises their damage by a huge amount. I'd also say that this one's pretty necessary because 2 werewolves is pretty good, but you really need that third in order to really help you out. Now you are left with a few options for the rest of your offensive legendaries. I personally would go with companions, gain the bonuses from Bestial Rampage key passive. So what this is going to do for you is it's actually one of the last nodes in the tree, and this is going to give you, when you're in werewolf form for 2.5 seconds, 20% attack speed, which is super great. What this legendary does is this adds this effect onto all of your companions, which obviously through the rest of the build you can see is being super buffed, and so this makes this build super duper incredibly strong. One of my biggest regrets is this is the one legendary I'm mentioning here that I don't have in the footage, so everything that you're seeing right now should be even more crazy than it is right now. Like you saw my companion solo bosses from dungeons in this. Yeah, honestly, they should be doing it even quicker. If I get footage tonight, because I'm going to play the heck out of this, I will try and throw it up. But guys, like, this build, this is how insane it is. It can go even crazier. Now let's get into the defensive legendaries, where Earthen Bulwark is our focus. And I know that this has a lot of people dumping on the ability, but the first one that we want to get is that we are going to be adding 6 seconds to Earthen Bulwark, which frankly is the kingpin in all of this. This again cannot work without this legendary because it lasts way too short of a period of time. Even then, even with this legendary, you're going to have a lot of downtime on it, so I don't necessarily even think it's broken. But what we're going to be doing is we're throwing a huge amount of power into this barrier. The next one that we want is we want the legendary that gives us bonus earth shield for every single enemy that we crowd control. This will be incredibly easy with this build to proc. I have had no problems whatsoever. And now the last legendary is the one that gives you 20% more movement speed, which as a werewolf is pretty freaking awesome, but it also lets you move through units, like literally totally ignoring them when you have the unstoppable effect, which is what we get from the Earthen Bulwark because we spec'd into that second point of it. And I'm gonna throw up footage because this literally makes some dungeons really, really funny. But mind you, as someone who has played Necromancer and Sorcerer, they have similar kinds of abilities that completely allow them to cheese things, and so I think that this is actually very fair. It looks really crazy though. Hey, the others look crazy too. So now we are a monster. We are actually a complete raid boss with 3 totally epic werewolf minions that make me actually not feel so bad for not playing Necromancer, which is hard to say because Necromancer is so busted. I don't feel quite so bad. Obviously Necromancer with right legendaries can do disgusting, disturbing things, as I'm sure we've all seen who've played the beta. Finally, you're also unstoppable and have an incredibly massive shield, so you also have crit tons and you AoE from the vines and the ravens. Like, this build rams its foot down everything in the beta, so much that I wish that I could get the butcher to spawn, so I'd make him my little bitch. I actually genuinely want to see the butcher. I want to see the butcher. I will hit OBS start recording as soon as I can, and I will slap it on this channel because I actually think I could just totally dump on him. I'm gonna end this video with a big disclaimer that this was beta and just getting all of these legendary effects was hard enough, so this build is with extremely, and I mean extremely, sus bonuses on the gear. Like, if I was playing Among Us, I would definitely be rung on. A more refined build would be totally focusing in on getting like all of these affixes up, like more of these plus companion skill damages, which I do have on some of my pieces because I tried to re-roll and I basically ran out of gold because it's the end of beta, so why not? But I don't really know what else to say. I made the darn thing work. I made Werewolf Druid work, and I'm like, holy shoot. Now, does this mean that I don't think Druid needs buffs? Oh yeah, I think it totally, really, definitely does. Even with this, it's just like, you need to go how far in order to make it feel good? Look at all that they have to do to match a minuscule portion of the Sorcerer or Necromancer's power. It really does feel like that meme. Just because I can make a cohesive build with a laundry list of very specific legendaries, honing in on very specific synergies, does not suddenly somehow mean that it's in a great state. This was very finely tuned, but what I should say is that this should be a solid indicator to everyone is, hey, once you do get a cohesive Druid build going, it can pop off severely. So this should be like, yes, the beta's ending, but there's hope for the Druid. There's a lot of potential for the Druid, and so that's more why I'm doing this. That being said, I'm obviously going to be keeping on playing in the beta and get more footage, so I may show some different variations or even refinements later if I can get that one legendary. Things will be crazy. So yeah, I just want to let you guys know about this. That being said, I hope you enjoyed the background footage. I'm out to play some more with this. Also, before I forget, I'm coming back in from editing. This build was given to me by Star Lau, and I did ask, hey, is it okay if I start sharing this around? And they were just like, yep, that's sweet, and like share it around. And I think that the Druid hype for endgame with different builds should be really high, because the early game,